I bet when you created your first scenario where you wanted to invoke a god power, let's say you want to invoke Earthquake in our case, you went onto triggers, you inserted a new trigger, you set the condition to whatever you want. In our case, we'll set always because we wanted to invoke right away, but it could be anything. You went onto effects, you chose the effect invoke god power, you search for Earthquake, and you set the area there. And you've tested your scenario, and no matter how long you wait, the god power isn't invoked. But why? Well, you didn't think as a player. As a player, there is two main things you need to do to be able to invoke the god power. The first thing is to have line of sight. You can't invoke Earthquake without line of sight. There is god powers where you could do that, but Earthquake isn't one of them. So how do we add line of sight? Well, you could add units, buildings, or you could just do revealers. I have a video on revealers if you don't know what that is, but basically they allow you to have small line of sight without them being actual units. So we add plenty of revealers to make sure that we have line of sight on this area. And when we test the scenario, we can see that we have plenty of line of sight, but the god power is still not invoked. Well, I told you there is two factors. The second factor actually is you need the god power to be able to invoke it. So if you look at the toolbar there, you can notice that we don't have the god power. And how do we obtain it? Well, there is two ways. You could always set the tech status to Artemis and grant the Earthquake, or there is a much easier way. So you could go to grant god power, and we choose Earthquake. Now there is one thing you need to pay attention to, is that Earthquake need to be granted before you invoke it. Now, in our case, they are both granted and invoked at the same time. The order here doesn't really matter because they're in the same trigger, so it will work. But if you do it in separate triggers, be sure to have the invoke before the grant before the invoke. And you can make sure to do that by checking run immediately for the grant god power. And now if we want to test, we can see that the Earthquake will be invoked shortly. Yeah? So this is how you do it. That's very easy. Two conditions. Line of sight, grant the god power beforehand. Now there is two small things I want to add about invoking and granting god powers. First thing is that some god powers are not named in the same way they are named in the game. So you'll have to search them. One of them, for example, is Ancestors. It is named Skeleton something, as I remember. Skeleton power. So yeah, there is many god powers also named that way. I don't remember them all. So you have to test them each. Also, there is special god powers. For example, Sandstorm is Shifting Sands, I think. So there is also some god powers of the campaign. For example, Seed of Gaia of the last Titan level. Also, there is many more god powers. You can play with them. So be sure to check them all. Another thing you can notice is there is two set areas. And you may ask why. Well, there is some god powers like Shifting Sands and Underworld where you need to place them twice. In that case, be sure to add line of sight on both positions, or else it won't work. So this is all I wanted to show you for this video. If you learned something new, be sure to leave a like, and I will see you next time for another video. Take care and goodbye.